This week's big review is Collision Effects by Sound Yeti, who are a brand new company. Now, I know this show has been stuffed to the gills with cinematic scoring toolkits already, but since Sound Yeti's new Collision Effects is such a good looking piece of software, I had to give it a deeper look in this week's review. This is a sample library for Kontakt with almost 15 gigabytes of samples. It comprises 3,100 different sound sources and has a huge number of Nki files. It's 234 different Nki patches. It's pretty big. It's also worth mentioning it does run in the free Kontakt player and is NKS compatible as well for complete control and machine hardware. This is actually their very first product from Sound Yeti, and they've obviously gone all out to impress with a large library encompassing lots of styles, a fancy looking interface design and a fully animated control feature. So can the sounds match up to the looks? Let's find out. The main interface has 4 pages. The first has got controls for destruction, shimmer, depth, reversing, pitch controls and ADSR as well. The second page has various static effects. You'll be used to that kind of thing on a Kontakt interface. The third page has effects that can be assigned to Envelope, LFO and sequencer automation. And the final page has Convolution reverb settings. There's actually 190 different reverbs which you can play with, which is a very large amount. The interface is pretty easy to understand. I found it pretty straightforward despite the large number of controls. The third page here had me really interested. The animated envelope and LFO graphics did seem a little bit like a gimmick at first, but actually these animations I found really helpful in showing the shapes that affect the different effects modules and how they work. This is very clever stuff. The controls on the first page of the interface for destruction and such like, they have additional sliders underneath for fine-tuning the sound, something I appreciated, another nice touch I thought. I also did like the reverse button, especially when I was auditioning long samples with huge attack times, things like risers and sirens. Then I could just reverse that patch and hear what the ending of the sample sounded like without having to sit and play through each one all the way through. Let's come on to the sounds themselves. Now, although they're not the very best cinematic effects I've ever heard in my life, they're far from the worst. They're pretty great all in all. They're nice and functional. They've got a good range of frequencies covered. Some have a very nice sense of space as well. And there's some nice depth and surround effects going on with a few of those samples. However, I do have some complaints about the library, and these complaints are quite significant. So my problems are mainly to do with auditioning and browsing through the sounds. The first thing that struck me about the library was the sheer number of different Nki files to juggle with. So I started with the FX themes patches and worked my way through the other ones. This took ages to go through everything. It's made even more frustrating by the fact that there aren't any WAV files to just quickly dip into and speed through. This wouldn't matter so much if the engine made it easier to audition the sounds, but it really doesn't. Some patches like Asylum Trailer Hits 1 have almost logically laid out mapping with a hit on 2 keys. Now that's a good example of one of their patches. However, the mapping extends well beyond the range of a normal 88 key keyboard, which I do find annoying. You have to jump up and down octaves just to hear everything on offer. Some other patches fare less well and have mapping that is much more unpredictable. I'll give as an example Deep Heart Bass Hit, which has some sounds mapped over 3 octaves and other sounds mapped over just 1. There's no real telling of where they're going to be unless you play through. So that meant that for every one of the hundreds of Nki files, to hear all of the sounds, I either had to play up or down the entire keyboard, including the 2 octaves above and below the normal range, or I had to open the mapping window to see how the Nki was mapped, just in case some great sounds were hiding and I didn't come across them. Now this is really unacceptable and makes finding the perfect sound, of which Collision Effects has hundreds of great sounds, far more hassle than it needs to be. So that is the bottom line, and how usable this library is for you really depends on what type of composer you are. For me, a wealth of great sounds and a brilliant interface have been ruined by illogical mapping decisions, and that's a shame, as I was ready to be 100% on board with this library. These issues for me are deal breakers, and I won't necessarily be reaching for Collision Effects when I need a quick and easy effects solution. However, some people will be more than happy to delve in, exploring all of the sounds, and they'll have the time to do so. Just I don't have the time to do that. So for more information on Sound Yeti and Collision Effects, do head to their website. Thank you so much for watching. That's just a small taste of the Samplecast, a weekly podcast and YouTube show for sample library geeks and plugin enthusiasts. You can find out more information at thesamplecast.com. Don't forget to subscribe.